Hey everyone, this is Founders365 with me, Stephen Haggerty. Today I'm joined by Sarah Jolley Jarvis. And I'm not even sure if I said your name right, but I love the name anyway.
I've never had Jarvis before. Jarvis.
Jarvis, sorry.
It is French. It's French, apparently.
Jarvis, maybe.
Yeah, okay, sure.
How are you today, Sarah?
I'm good, thank you.
Good, yeah, very good. Thank you very much. So you are, I'd probably say, and I'm sure someone else has branded this, but like the queen of sales in terms of teaching people how to sell without being a sleazebag effectively, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Cool.
That's me in a nutshell. Job done.
Great. Thanks for being on the show. You've been guest number 43, and I'll speak to you soon. Let's jump into how you first got started in sales, because it's whenever I hear your like 12-year journey of doing the big sales, I just sometimes think of it's like an American film, and you're going around hospital to hospital. I'm sure it wasn't like that. Fill me in terms of what you were doing to get to where you are now.
Okay, so I think most people just end up in sales. I think I've met two people in my entire sales career who actually aspired to be a salesperson. I mean, you don't wake up one day as a child and go, I'm going to be a salesperson. You're going to be a fireman or a doctor or a nurse or something. Sales doesn't really, normally get on the radar. I was doing a placement year with Mars Electronics, so Mars the chocolate people, one of their divisions, and I watched the sales guys come in and out the office, and I was like, that looks better than my job. I didn't like office environment. I didn't like the having to be present, sat on a chair for like a set amount of time per day, and then I got to go home. I wanted to be about actually what value I was providing, what I was doing, what I was generating as far as income was concerned. And sales is more like that. It's less about the set time and more about the, as long as you're bringing in the business, they're not bothered about the time that you are or you're not working, or whether you have an extra long coffee break or whatever. There's that flexibility, and it's about trading my skills for money rather than my time.
Exactly. For you, going from sort of the corporate thing, let's call it, to where you are now, so obviously you run an agency with your husband and you're branching out or going back into what you love best, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so the corporate world was, because I was in like the extreme corporate world, so lots of sales scenarios, they actually like let you write stuff down and things like that, whereas I was in like medical sales, pharmaceutical sales, so it's really highly regulated, and so there is literally no scope for ad-libbing. You've got to stick with that.
Sort of thing.
Like you can't even underline something, because apparently that might be misleading a customer. So it was mental, and so it was very highly regulated. You can't say that, so it was a real shock coming into the real world, or the business world. I was really lucky that for sort of 4 or 5 years before I made the step of going all in, I'd been working in startups with Martin. So I'd been involved in the more normal world as opposed to the highly regulated corporate world.
Did you almost have to relearn everything then?
Sorry?
Did you almost have to relearn everything?
I had to relearn the fact that there was things that you actually could do, and you could actually say that.
To underline.
I still find it really shocking, actually, that some people that I'm like, they can't say that. That's not true. And I'm allowed to underline things if I want to. I can even write things down. It's just it was very, very regulated. There was no a way of tagging your customer and getting in front of them online and all that sort of stuff. It's just that was a different world, the lead gen side of stuff. So it was really, really different. But I liked the working, working for yourself and everything else. And then when I had a family, I was like, there's no way I can go back to this corporate job. So I was like, right, okay, I'm going to go all in with what was my side hustle. And so I started off doing sales training. And then I got involved with the lead gen side of things, because I can't possibly leave someone to look after that sort of stuff without getting involved with the customer experience and the customer onboarding and the sales. So I did that, and so now we both part own the agency side of things, and then To be honest, the training, I was like, you know what, I want to do more of the training, not just people where we're generating them leads and then they're not getting the return they want. I want it to be a separate entity, because what actually I'm really passionate about being yourself, and not becoming this mini guru who walks around like a little robot just repeating phrases that's worked for them 10 years ago. I wanted people to actually get to hear that, and it doesn't get heard in the agency, because it's all intermingled with lead generation and everything else. So it needs to stand on its own to be heard properly.
What's some of the things that has really shocked you when you speak to people about sales? Because from where I stand, it seems like lots of people fear selling, fear putting themselves out there and selling their product or their service.
Well, the reason that I was like, right, when I went all in with sales, I went in with sales training, was because I really liked, there's loads of people out there who they're really good at what they do. And I see it time and time again. They're like, wait a minute, I'm much better than that competitor. And yet that competitor's absolutely killing it. And, my product's better, my offering's better. But it's just the fact they're marketing themselves and selling themselves really badly. And, who I like working with are people who are good at what they do, but what they do isn't the sales and marketing. Or at least it's not, as far as, themselves are concerned. And so I really like working with those. And so, that's kind of where it sort of came from. As far as what I'm shocked with, I always find it really, I want to sometimes rattle people because they want to give away the sales side of things. I don't know. I think sometimes it is a bit of a, the whole idea of hustling and everything else that you've got to do. It's not glamorous. I did a workshop the other night, and I've been chatting to some of the people post workshop, and I'm just like, what, this is all really quite unsexy. It's all consistency. It's all just actually getting your hands dirty. And so, the whole scrabbling around, the whole having conversations with people, I think people hope there's a quicker fix. And I think, actually, their thought process is, I'm going to hire somebody. And I think that's my biggest key shocker, is that people want to hire somebody on commission only basis. And then they think that person is going to represent their business better than them. And that's just not the case.
Why do people go for that then? Why do people not want to get their hands dirty?
I think it's a confidence thing. I mean, like, sales is proper putting yourself out there. And, you are setting yourself up for rejection, feedback you don't want to hear, particularly when it's your business, because you think this is an amazing idea. Your friends, your family have told you it's an amazing idea. And so, anything to the contrary is a bit painful, and then painful on top of painful on top of painful. And you want to just avoid it. I think there is sometimes people are a bit like, I didn't sign up for this. I'm kind of above this sort of level of doing stuff now. And actually, I do sales training. I have clients that I work with on a retainer and mentorship basis. I still do the sales for I still head up the sales for our agency. And because, I enjoy it. But it's hard work. Cold calling with my little headset on is painful at times. But actually, I actually get sometimes to have some really nice conversations with really random people that I've never actually spoken to otherwise. So, it is swings and roundabouts, but I think people think, oh, somebody else can do a better job than me, or I just don't want to do it. I just find it too painful and uncomfortable. You are much better off skilling up yourself so that you feel confident and happy with it than you are handing it over.
Do you think every single person has the ability to sell, or do you think there's some people that it just could never learn it properly?
I think 99% of people can sell. And I think particularly if you're selling in your own style, if you're not trying to follow some guru with some random phrasing you'd never use, if you stay true to yourself, as long as you're capable of communicating with people, as long as you've managed to persuade somebody to do something they didn't want to do in your entire life, then you have skills to draw upon to build the ability to sell. Nobody will sell your business as well as you, particularly in the early stages. When you scale and everything else, you're going to have to get people in. But to start with, it's down to you, because you're the person who'll best represent them. To get somebody who's decent, who's going to be passionate, you're looking at a really decent wage, and then commission on top. And because if they were that good, they would find that. So
yeah, exactly. When someone reaches out to you, or when you start working with someone, what's your process to figure out their style?
So we talk a lot around situations. We do a lot of role play. So Martin finds that entire idea hilarious. But it's a lot less exciting than it sounds. So I pretend to be customer and they go through their spiel and we talk through. So it's a lot about, I say, look, this is what I'd say. What sort of wording would you feel comfortable saying with that? And so normally they'll come up with the sort of their take on it. They'll practice it. It's all about the practicing. So, you know, their natural style, it's showing yourself, because at the end of the day, particularly if you're a coach or something like that, who somebody's going to be working with, they need to get that experience of who you actually are. Because if you're pretending to be somebody you're not, you're misselling yourself. And then that's when you end up working with somebody that you think, oh my God, how did I attract you? You're a total nightmare. So, you know, it's working through with them what they're currently saying and building on it, rather than, you know, starting it from scratch.
And when they're at that stage, when they're going through that role play and you're pretending to be the customer, what are some of the things that they like, the common things that they do wrong? The ones that you just go, oh my God, this is like the 7th person this week.
That normally comes like one of my lives. I get to the end of the day and I'm like, I can't take this anymore. It's normally around like there's no structure to the call, so that they start a conversation with somebody, but they actually have no idea where this is going to go. They've got no aims for the conversation. So if they're not got an idea of where they're heading, the conversation ends up being a nice chat, and before you know it, the chat's finished and no one's agreed anything. There's that. And then sometimes the customer takes charge as well, which is even more painful. And then there's not asking any questions. There's the throwing just features at people, rather than actually letting that person know what that means to them. And then there's the very vague, you know, sort of apologetic information around pricing. And
sorry,
then, you know,
much, but I need to, you know.
Pricing's a key word. People are like, oh no, ground swallow me up. I've normally talked to people about like what's the most common like question and what's the most painful question they tend to get asked, and a lot of people don't actually practice that. So they'll go from call to call thinking, please don't say that, please don't think this, please don't ask this, and then they'll ask it and they'll go through the same process of answering it really badly. So before you get on a call, you know, going through actually what you'd say and saying it out loud, that really helps. So that actually you practice. So when that person says it, you're like, actually, I don't need the ground to swallow me up because I've got a really good answer for that. And that's the thing, is if you know your products, then you know the things that come up time and time again. So you practice for it.
Exactly. Other than the obvious in terms of sales, aka it helps you create a business and keeps the lights on and pays you and pays staff. Why else is getting really good at sales so important?
It's well, when I went and did a lecture yesterday at Aston Union, I was like, I said to the students, I was like, every single one of you in here, if you ever want a job, needs to sell. And you need to sell yourself over the other candidates. You know, like some of the key people out there who they sell, but they don't officially have a sales hat on, are like doctors, physios, people, teachers. It's such a skill. It's really useful. And actually a lot of the questioning, so understanding actually what's motivating somebody, I use in arguments a lot, to try and figure out what that person is actually getting at. So it's like, I get you're saying this, but where does this come from and what does that actually mean? And what's that meaning to you? Because a lot of the time what someone's saying and actually what's driving that, what they're saying are two different things. Massively.
You mentioned some good points there in terms of the industries that you don't necessarily associate with sales, and yet I'm a firm believer everyone sells everything, right? If you want anything, you're pretty much selling in some aspect. But why do you think in the industries that aren't obvious, the sales training aspect isn't pushed further? I know it's probably absorbed in terms of like communication training or something along those lines, but do you think that if people knew actually or understood the foundations of selling, they would then be able to be a better teacher, a better doctor, all these other industries?
Definitely. I think, you would adapt it. So, I have done training with people who haven't been an outright salesperson. And in today's, as business has evolved, you've got, your businesses are so much more accessible to your customer. You've got so many different platforms they can whinge at you on, or question and ask you a question, or find out about product information. There's, like that, you're so accessible now. That actually there's so many more customer facing elements to a business, whether you're on your own or you've got a team, than there used to be. So customer service, like any accounts queries, technical support, all that sort of thing. It's all about, if you're customer facing, if you're having that interaction, you're selling. And so it's a lot harder to sort of hide in the background. Probably HR and some of the main finance people can hide. But other than that, HR should just, anyway. So permanently throw away the key. But
we're not getting into a HR debate. This is
let's not get into a HR debate.
That's people later.
But if you're customer facing, you are representing that business. If you're representing the business, then you are in an element of sales.
Yeah, massively. Technology is an interesting one, social media and all that kind of stuff. How has that changed the way you've personally sell over the last couple of years?
A lot more. Well, obviously, back in the corporate world, there was no texting. There was nothing like that. Whereas now, Messenger.
There was no texting.
Well, there's no texting your customer. My God, that would have been.
Texting was around. We're not talking.
Texting was around. It was around, but it wasn't. It wasn't an option for us to be texting, and in particularly like even or selling. You could let somebody know you were running late, but that's about it. Whereas actually Messenger, and WhatsApp and text message is a lot more common. And I know people, I've worked with people who they've purely, they've pretty much done the entire transaction over Messenger or over text. So that's definitely changed things. The ability to text people rather than ring, people, when your phone rings and you're like, oh my God, it rings. It's like, whoa, it's making a noise. It's like the last thing that you expect it to do now. Whereas, it used to be, it would be phone calls, it would be face to face. Like, I was talking to somebody, I got chatting to someone like you do, on the train yesterday, and they were a salesperson. And they were saying that actually lots of my calls now are done over Skype or Zoom because people don't want that face to face.
And do you think that has changed the way people buy as well, in terms of the relationship with a service provider or a product?
I think so. And I think also it restricts you in the amount of information you're getting from a customer. So like their environment, their body language, it can get a lot more difficult to see, particularly on Messenger, tonality, actually, how is that being delivered? What do they mean by that? And, you can totally get the wrong end of the stick. 2 people, 3 people can read the same conversation and take something totally different from it.
Yeah. How do you overcome that then? From a sales perspective, how do you overcome that?
I think it's a lot more. So I get people to reiterate things a lot more. So, am I right in thinking, is this the priority? You've got to ask a lot more clarifying questions, because before you know it, you've gone off on a tangent, because you've picked up on something that was really insignificant. A bit like when you're in an interview and somebody picks up on that little bit of your CV that you fibbled on. And before you know it, like you're down some rabbit hole. And that's what can happen because you're not getting that understanding. You're not getting them sitting forward, sitting back, crossing their arms, all that sort of stuff, because you don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. And if someone is going to go down that rabbit hole, or accidentally go down that rabbit hole, I should say, how does the seller then claw it back?
Well, hopefully the person you're selling to at some point will say to you, actually, that's not my main priority, or actually that's not what I'm interested in, or something. And then you're going to have to go back to, okay, well, what is the most important thing, And I'm very much a case of, I'd be like, oh, sorry, I totally got the wrong end of the stick there. What is, admit that actually I've made a bit of a mess up here. Let me know, point me in the right direction of what I should be doing.
Exactly. In terms of sales as a general field, what are some of the myths that you've seen crop up in recent times? That's always I love the sales myths that I've seen out there.
Oh, I think the thing is it's that whole, because I remember putting up a post, which I wish then I hadn't done, because I was like, my God, does everyone think that about salespeople? But I was like, if I say sales, what do you think? Oh my word, it was really bad. And I think, to be fair, there's a lot of people historically out there and still out there who don't represent sales very well. You know, they don't do it any favors. They are pushy. I mean, I spoke to somebody in the States about 6-8 months ago now, and they were saying, you know, I have this script, and they went through this script with me, and this person was a lovely person, but they followed this script, and it was like, if the customer says this, and one of the examples was they were selling to women, and it was like, you know, I need to go away and talk to my husband about this, or partner about this, and like she was supposed to say, I thought this was your business, not your husband's. You know, is your relationship like that where you can't make a decision on your own? Wow. And like, these are her options. And I'm like, and what, you know, would you actually ever say that to anybody in a conversation? She was like, well, no. And I was like, well, why are you saying it now then? And I think that's the thing is people can switch. I mean, I used to go out with sales teams, and I used to sit there, and it'd be so funny because this person would be like a normal human being, and they'd be just chatting away with their customer. And then they go, right then. And they'd like literally like change their body
sales
position.
Mode activated.
Yeah, it was like sales mode activated. Enough of the niceties, and it was like, actually, it's just a conversation. You're just following on from what you've been talking about. But so often people feel the need to go into this different mode, and it's just you've got to fight that urge. You've got to stay with who you are, and use your style of communicating to get to the point where people are buying from you.
Exactly. For that sort of style, though, do you think it still happens as much because of the amount of free training out there, you know, YouTube, films, all this kind of stuff? Do you think that scripted, I've got to do this, if this, then that style is still being taught as much as it used to be?
I know it's being taught. I don't know if it's as much as it used to be, but yeah, it's definitely still out there. People want it.
Really?
Yeah, we've had conversations where, you know, mine's been like, well, if you just create some sort of script. I'm not creating a script. You know, there's key questions. You can write yourself a form that you can fill in, that sort of thing. Yeah, but literally word for word, you know, you've got to respond. You're a grown adult capable of communicating. You know, you're not like, I'm going to have a conversation with this person, so, you know, I'm going to write this down. You know, like, you might want some key points you want to cover, but you're not going to write down word for word and then sit there in front of somebody and flick through, well, now I've got to say this. You just, you know, be a human. But it's having the confidence to be a human, and it's having the skills there that, you know, so that you naturally just do these things. It's practicing those skills. It's having those skills taught to you, so that you feel confident and you can draw on them as and when you need to. So in your head should be a little toolkit. It might start off as being a written version that you would read through before you go into a call. But I'm from the world of, you were in front of a customer. So there's no way in front of a customer I could be like, wait a minute, your answer isn't here. I just got to go to volume 2.
Reminds me of that Friends episode where Phoebe is working in the call center, and like, she doesn't have the answer in front of her, and so she freaks out.
Exactly.
Definitely,
you know, like that's what you're looking at. It's yeah, you know, at the end of the day, you're a human. You're capable of communicating in that language. It's about feeling confident and having those little skills.
Yeah. Do you think the confident aspect is the first hurdle that you always have to come across with people?
I think confidence is a massive thing, but I think that confidence comes from knowledge. And if you feel knowledgeable, if you feel empowered, so a lot of concerns around pricing come from the fact that, you know, when I actually start to question people of where did your pricing come from, they did literally pluck it out of thin air. And if you've plucked it out of thin air, then, and it's not based on it. And I was talking to a client earlier, and she was doing a little testimonial for me. And she was like, you know, one of the things that she was absolutely bricking it when it came to her pricing. And it was different. She was going to be charging for bank holidays and stuff. It was a retainer. It's nursery, so it's childcare. And she was worried about all this, you know, it was totally against the grain. She was charging more. She was new. She was like, I'm not going to be able to do it. And I was like, right, go away. Look at what everyone else is charging. Look at what they're offering. And look at what you're offering. And then, you know, figure out from there, actually, where's the value? What value are you adding that they're not? And vice versa. And it's just being really honest with yourself. But once you've equipped yourself with that knowledge, she actually said on a testimonial video, she was like, well, once I knew that, I was a bit like, yeah, this is my price. And, you know, that's it. There was no apology. There was no nothing. And yeah, you know, the confidence and the value she was offering, she's been fully booked since 3 months of opening.
Boom.
With a waiting list. And I was like, you could have charged more. but she's going to be.
She's happy. She's happy. That's the main thing. That's the main. In terms of the pricing, do you find people seem to undervalue or overvalue their pricing?
Regularly under. The vast majority of the people that I work with, they don't feel that they come to me because they're not feeling confident. The people that I find more tricky are the ones that are coming to me and they're very confident in themselves and their own abilities. And I've got a 10 grand product. And then when you start actually looking at it, it's like, how many 10 grand products have you sold? None. Yeah. And actually you're struggling to attract the right person. The vast majority of people, they're not confident. It comes from an unconfident place. And so underpricing comes from an unconfident place.
Yeah, exactly. So for you this year, you just launched it. Well, you just completed a mini challenge, right?
It was a workshop. It was a silenced sales workshop. So
£99 and you returned 500.
Yeah, so I was a bit bored with that. It was interesting actually because my normal demographic is female, and actually I got quite a few guys, and I think because I got more guys than girls actually, and I think that came from
why?
Well, I think that's because it was pretty gutsy, I was a bit like unapologetically, I know I can generate you more income. And it was £99, and I said if you don't make 5 times that back, then you'll get your refund. And I got them as we were going through to put in the chat, actually, are you doing this already? And lots of people I've spoken to already have been like, actually, that was really a light bulb moment for me, and this was really good, and this was really helpful. And so, it's fundamental stuff that I found people do again and again wrong, which I've put together as a kind of like, if this is you, this is the action steps you need to take. And I think that's where a lot of coaching is missing, is the action steps. You have people who will create these wonderful ideas for you, and then they'll go, right, so go away and implement it. And you're like, well, I don't know where to start because this was your idea. Whereas I like to break things down with people into manageable steps. So, where they want to be and where they are. So I end up working with a lot of startups because they don't have any sales, and they want sales.
And they need it.
And so, and that's taking it step by step of, well, you've got to do this, and then you've got to do that, and you've got to do the other.
In terms of working with startups, do you find the same issues are cropping up when you're working with sort of the sole trader or the one-man band sort of situation?
Yeah, definitely. People tend to, it's really lovely, and it takes me back to when we our first startup, where you want all the bells and whistles, you want the website, you want all the pretty designs, and then you're like, oh, and now we better test, we better put that out now and see if we've got any customers. And then it's like, I'm always like, let's test as cheaply as possible. Let's mock up. People are like, oh, but I want a nice design, and it's like, I know you do, but you don't need it right now. And so, is that evolving? You've got to get in front of your ideal customer. So the best thing is when somebody comes and they're like, I found this need, and I don't know how to meet that need. And that's the great thing. When somebody comes to you with an all singing or dancing widget, and they're like, please help me find the people who want my widget, that's when it's a bit more tricky. Why
is that trickier?
Because they've done it. They've created it in isolation of their, of a customer. So they've created this. Friends and family tend to say to them, oh, that's a great idea.
Great. Yeah.
Yep, great. And then you're like, okay, buy it. Oh, I don't need one of those right now. So, no one wants to, to burst your bubble. So you've created this thing. Everyone wants you to succeed. Mostly they do. You do get the odd relative, but anyway. And so, everyone's trying to be positive for you, but actually then you end up going down, again, a bit of a rabbit hole with a design or a creation, and you haven't actually spoken to somebody who would part with the money for it, or who would then look to use it. And so the likelihood of you getting that offering spot on is really quite low. And then the lot of people don't do the research needed. I mean, there is so much research, competitors, people who are offering the same outcome as you but aren't doing the same mechanism as you. What are your USPs? Is there any reason they should use you versus Doris down the road? It's all that sort of stuff. And so that's where, finding out that information before you build a website, before you get a brand, before you even get a name, is really important.
Yeah, massively. How do you make sure that you stay relevant in your own business in terms of still generating sales and standing out from the crowd?
Knowing what else is out there. So doing your market research on it. you know, and a bit of a reality check, really. Where are we versus other things? What's going on in the market? You know, what barriers are there in the market to somebody else setting up doing the same thing? You know, USPs are massive, but if you sit on your laurels with your USPs, people can catch you up.
Yeah, massively. If you see someone else doing what you're doing, how do you look at them? Do you look at them as competition, collaboration, or do you just go, oh, I really wish they weren't doing that?
I think
you can be on it.
Depends on your confidence, really, doesn't it? But like from my point of view, I'm like, I only have a finite amount of time. And so I can't teach everybody who I'd like to how to sell or, you know, how to generate more income in their business. I can't do it. So for me, I like the fact that there are other people. I get very upset when they're not on the same wavelength with how you should sell
when they're selling scripts.
And that's where I tend to go off on one, is when someone's that aggressive, back people in a corner, telling them absolutely loads of bullshit kind of stuff. That's where that perplexes me. But in the main, as long as they've got that same sort of approach and that they're coming at it from the same angle, the more the merrier, because that will help us turn around what people's perceptions of sales. And you know, multiple people banging the drum is much better than you on your own.
Massively. But you know, it screams to me that you're just someone that is so ethical in terms of how you teach and how you want to deliver, and but most importantly, how you want other people to deal with their customers and deal with their clients and deal with anyone, even if it's not their clients, which is really nice to see, because I think there's so much of that. I would probably not the right way to say it, but I would say like Americanized, like we said, scripted. You got to be on the phone 24/7, all those kind of elements that when I first thought of sales years ago, that's how I thought. I was like, oh, that's how it's done. And there's a huge fear over that. You know, a big industry in the UK is obviously like recruitment, and that style is still driven in that a lot.
It is.
You know, it's like, oh, you've got to have call time. It's like, oh my God, no. Why are they doing that? I know a couple of my friends, they work for companies that are still in that sort of framework, and I'm just like, how does that even work?
The aggressive selling is not, it doesn't do us any favors. And the thing is it should be a long-term relationship, and it should be a win-win situation. And that's what gets you returning customers, because at the end of the day, it's expensive to find customers. It takes time, or it takes money, or it takes both. So, you know, you want to hold on to that customer. So the whole aggression, the whole selling somebody something that actually doesn't fit their need, it is really wrong. It's really unethical. And that's just not my background in the pharmaceutical world, where, you know, like, you know, if you missell somebody something in that's major consequences, and maybe that's kind of affected my outlook on it, as, you know,
I think massively.
It is right and wrong. There is right and wrong to it, and, you know, you shouldn't be selling somebody that isn't something that's going to work for them, or you don't believe is going to work for them. But when I did the presentation yesterday, they had a little bit of a lecture beforehand, so they had like 15 minutes and then me, and they showed the Wolf of Wall Street. The one where he was stood up there with his microphone telling them all to solve all their problems with sales, and she was like, and they were talking about management styles, and she was like, what do you think of this? And they were like, well, he's really passionate. I couldn't help it. I stood up and I went, you do not do that in the real world. Like, that is not how you sell. I was like, if you want a short career in sales, do that. I was like, if you want a long career in sales, look after your customers. And that's the thing, is if you look after your customers, whether it's in your business or for somebody else's business, they're your asset. They'll come. Like when I was in sales, my customers would follow me to a different company if I started selling a different product, a competitor product, and they knew that, and that's why they would pay you more to move to their company. You know, they really are an asset, whether it's for you or somebody else.
So it's almost not even about the product or service; it's about you.
No, I've had some, you know, if you've got a portfolio of products, you'll have the odd elephant in there, because they can't be good at everything. And I used to say to my customers, look, I've got sales targets for this. Can you give it a try and let me know? But I'm not convinced. And they'd give it a whirl and they'd go, yeah, it's not that good. And then we'd move on. And I'd just be like, look, I'm just not doing it. Like I had a manager who sailed very close to the wind, and I was like, I'm not doing that.
Not my style.
It's not my style.
But that's so good that you knew your style, and that's what you're now teaching others, you know, to figure out their style without
figure out the style
without being the sleaze bag, like you said. What
No
what
sneeze bag.
else have you? Yeah, or the sneeze bag. What else? What else have you got coming up this year that is gonna sort of help others?
So this year I've launched a new program, which is an accelerator program. So people work one-on-one with me for 8 weeks. So that gets them accelerating through the
Funny
process.
that.
So we look at where they are and where they're going to be, and then I speed that process up. So as some of my clients say, I do give them the kick up the rear end. So I provide a lot of accountability, a lot of tools, so that they can make that transition quickly, and it then equips them to continue on that trajectory.
What sort of people what sort of people do you attract into that?
Well, I've got one for people who are doing more startups and one for established businesses. It's a real range. So I've got someone at the moment who's looking at setting up a female taxi company. And then I know. And then I've got marketing guys in there. I've got all sorts of people in there who, they're looking, it tends to be more the one-on-one, the coaching, that sort of thing, where people are wanting to increase, particularly to get a steady influx of potential customers, as well as to generate those customers into, convert those customers into paying customers. So
step away from that feast or famine situation.
Exactly, that up and down feast or famine. And also, like, you can be really, really good at, converting inquiries into sales, but you've got to get those inquiries.
Yeah, exactly. So otherwise you're never going to have that great conversation anyway.
No, you can be really practiced, and I can give you all these skills, and I'm like, have you used them yet? No. Have you used them yet?
Anyone speak to? Oh, damn it.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have to do role play instead. So it's much better for them to go, you know what, I had this cracking conversation with this person. Yeah. This happened, or this wasn't so good. And I can't train somebody in, post-call analysis if they hadn't had a call.
Exactly. So my final question to you is, and I ask all my guests this, but if you could give 3 sales tips to startups or, that more established business, what would those 3 hot sales tips be?
Established or not, the first thing you've got to do is make sure you know who your ideal customer is, and make sure that you're talking to them, and really, really hone in on that, because a lot of problems come from you trying to be something to everybody, and you just can't do it. You need to be talking to somebody, you need to be resonating with that person. You'll attract other people, and of course you're not going to turn them away, but you need that very, very clear message. Once you're clear and really laser focused on who you want, you attract them with what you're saying, you find them when you're doing your business development. So really understanding that customer avatar, the ideal customer is super, super important, regardless of how established you are, because it does evolve. You should always be looking back and figuring out, am I still on track? Have I gone a bit off piste? What am I doing? The other thing is listen to your customer. One of the key things about sales is it's actually a decent opportunity for market research. And it's as much information you can gather from somebody saying no as somebody saying yes. And I know it's really painful, but if somebody's like, no, I'm not interested, delve that little bit deeper and find out why. If you can't bring yourself to do it, get a friend to do it and do a bit of a skill swap. So you'll ask their no's and they can ask yours. But really delve in and understand where that customer's coming from. And my third thing would be is to always put the customer first, as far as what you're producing. If you've got a major drawback in your product offering and you could easily fill that drawback, then do it. Make life easier for yourself, make it as easy as possible for that customer to buy from you. At the end of the day, it's really, really busy. The markets are really, really busy. There's loads of people fighting for their money. You've got to prioritize them. And that includes following them up.
There we go. There's a cheeky 4th one there, the follow-up.
I was including it. That one was all encompassing. Focus on your customer. Make it as easy as possible.
They all have to be with each other, though, don't they? You can't just do one without the other. So it's all one big tip, basically.
It is. It's a big tip. Know who you're aiming at. Look after them. Yeah.
Sarah, really appreciate your time. If anyone wants to get in touch with you to become a better salesperson in their business, or just have a general sales chat, perhaps, what's the best way for them to do that?
I am the only Sarah Jolley Jarvis in the world.
Really?
So I have my Facebook page. Even if you spell it wrong, I still come up. I've got my Facebook page, I've got my Facebook profile. So, you know, I'm super contactable on that. You can get me on Messenger. So yeah, you know, please do, because
Excellent.
I just want to spread that sales love.
Yeah, no. And you certainly are. You're doing it in the best way possible and in an ethical way, which I love. Sarah, thank you so much for coming on. You've been guest number 43 on Founders365. I've been Stephen Haggerty. Thanks everyone for watching and listening.